Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started here on our Lunch and Learn, first of our series for 2023. So thank you for checking in. We do these presentations every other month over your lunchtime, and we know that that's a very valuable break for you. So we really appreciate that you are spending your lunchtime with us. Today, I will be hosting this. My name is Jennifer Houtz. I'm one of the counselors with the Ascension Employee Assistance Program, and I'm joined by my colleague, Brian McCabe, who is also a counselor with Ascension Employee Assistance. We've kind of divided up the presentation, so he'll be on the back end of this. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about loving our job. So today is Valentine's Day, and I hope that you actually love something other than your job and that you let them know that. But loving our job is also a really big part of hopefully our life. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. I hope you caught that the title of this is a little play on a song title that was actually really popular in country music in the 70s. I'm dating myself a little bit. And I'll give you a prize if you can tell me in the chat what year this came out or who sang this song, Take This Job and Shove It. Anybody know? Oh, good job. Dawn said Johnny Paycheck. You're right. Good job. So, and a little information on this when I looked up, because I wanted to be sure that I was right. It says that it was written in 1977 and it was country music by Johnny Paycheck. And it was about the bitterness of a man who had worked long and hard with no apparent reward, which is obviously what we don't want to have happen to us, right? As I mentioned, this is a presentation of the Ascension Employee Assistance Program. And this is a benefit to all of you that is on this call. Presentations is just one aspect of what we provide, but the counseling program available to you and every member of your household is completely paid for by your company. So I hope it's a benefit that you are utilizing. If you have questions about how you can access us or other things that we might be able to help you with, please contact us at the 800 number or on our website. Today, we're going to talk just a little bit, as I mentioned, about our jobs. It's a big part of our life. And it obviously, if we are unhappy with our job or dissatisfied with our work in general, it really affects us. It affects our focus, our motivation, our productivity, and our overall quality of life. So it seemed warranted that we would spend a little bit of time to look at, what makes people unhappy on their job, but more importantly, what makes people happy, because that's what I'm hoping for you, and how that affects our productivity. And Brian's going to give us some reminders on some ways that we can manage stress and how we can love our job more. So starting off with just a few facts, about 50% of Americans are satisfied with their job, which is awesome. And of that 50%, 20% even say they're passionate, which is, wow, that's really impressive, I think. What I want you to notice about this is, so in the top, it says people that are happy and satisfied with their life are more likely to be happy at work. And then at the bottom, people who are happy and engaged at work are more productive, innovative, and successful in their life. So we know that there is a big relationship here between our overall quality of life and how it affects our satisfaction at work, and vice versa, how much we enjoy our job, how much that overlaps and spills over into the rest of our life. So great, 50% of people are pretty satisfied with their job. But I want to know about the other 50%. What about the people who aren't very satisfied with their job, and what's going on with them, and what can we learn from that? One big issue that we have in all kinds of areas of our life in the United States is people struggling with anxiety and depression. And Gallup found that about 40% of employees believe that their mental health is negatively affected by their job. And perhaps you felt that way too. Obviously, stress, all kinds of interactions and Often just inability to have any positive effect on your job can really affect your mental health. And why this is important, obviously on a personal level, but also in more of a company-wide level, is to recognize how much this really affects productivity and attendance. So not surprising, probably, is that if you are reporting that you have excellent or very good mental health, you use about a quarter of the days off for sick time than people who are regularly reporting that they have fair or poor mental health. So we know that there is a direct relationship. The people that are really struggling obviously are going to not be as productive in the workplace, are going to need to use more time off. And this is across all different socioeconomic statuses. This is all different types of jobs. So directly affects obviously the whole company and productivity as a whole. So if 50% of people are unsatisfied with their job, what do we learn from this? Unfortunately, more recent research says that actually people's satisfaction with their job has been declining for about the last 20 years. And what are the top reasons? Big things affecting satisfaction for people, maybe not surprising to you, is job security. Unfortunately, right now we're hearing about a lot of layoffs that are happening in tech companies. Anytime that people feel threatened and not knowing, how much longer they're going to have their work, makes them very anxious, of course, and affects their satisfaction. Benefits and compensation are right up there too, which doesn't surprise anybody, I suppose. But I think it's very interesting because especially from a management level, people will often say that the number one thing that employees want is they just want to be paid more. And I think this shows, again, that really that's not what it's all about. Of course, we would all love to be paid more, but it's almost the same to say, I want to have an opportunity to use my skills and my abilities at work. Everybody wants to be able to do something they're good at, right? We feel good about ourselves when we do that we feel safe. So emotionally and physically safe in the workplace. And relationship with our supervisor is a huge one. That seems to be a big factor in people wanting to stay at their job or leaving their job, even if they don't love their pay. And some of it is just the work itself and also that work-life balance that we talk about. Interesting, though, that about 70% of people who say that they're satisfied also say that they're happy at their job. And again, the data showing us that companies where people are highly engaged and enjoying their work have about a 20% increase in income. And companies where there is low engagement, meaning that people do not feel connected to their work, do not see purpose, do not feel like their supervisor cares about them or even knows what they do, they're about an average of 30% decrease in income. And if you think about this just in terms of turnover, so if you have disengaged, unhappy people, it's more likely that they're going to be leaving, right? So then we've got gaps in time where we don't have someone in the workforce that affects our productivity. And just in general, if you've ever been in a workplace where people are leaving in droves, that's going to affect your happiness too, right? Because you're wondering like, oh, well, if everybody else is jumping ship, then maybe I should too. And oh, by the way, if I'm the one left here, that means I'm doing all the work that all those people left used to do, right? But what we know is that people that are highly engaged, obviously in their organization, they stay and they stay for the long run, and they're actually very productive. They're contributing and they're a part of the work community. So some wisdom about people who love their job. What do they do a little bit differently? They follow their passion. So hopefully you are blessed to have a job that you really get fired up about, and that you can work with other people who also get fired up about the same things that you do. It's a really important piece if you have the opportunity to follow something that you really care about. They look for the happy people. And this is despite the fact if you're working at a job that you really feel passionate about or not, there might be other things that you don't like so much. But at every workplace, there are people who are positive. There are people who are uplifting, who smile and greet you and want to be part of making things better. And then there are those who aren't. So it's kind of like your mom told you, it's the friends that you hang out with definitely influence you. So if you want to be happier at work, hang out with the happy people. They start their day the way they want to finish it. So having purpose and also having a positive attitude. Again, making a deliberate attempt to have a positive tone, to make a contribution, to make the best of their day. I think number 4 is a big one. They don't expect their job to make them happy. So they're not putting all of their eggs in the work basket, thinking that this is going to completely fulfill them in terms of their identity, in terms of, the contribution that they're making in the community, their role in the world, recognizing that we're more than just an employee, right? Or coworker. And also that they're not necessarily looking for perfection. So this speaks to the people who are extremely hard on themselves, that, they have to do things perfectly, or they have to do things at a certain standard, or they think that it wasn't worth it. That we're looking to do the best that we can with the time that we have and leave it at that. I did the best I could and now I'm going to go home. Some other factors of happy work. A lot of it has to do with your personality style. So going back to, are you the kind of person that sees the glass half empty or half full? And that is going to carry with you no matter what kind of work you're doing. That opportunity to make an impact, as we mentioned before. So some ability to be independent, make some decisions, that we have financial security. That goes back to the not worrying about the stability of your job. Opportunities to be creative, do something that you're good at and inventive. Obviously, to feel like you're noticed and that somebody actually cares about you in your workplace. And definitely a work-life balance. If you feel like your work is taking over your entire life, you're probably not going to be very happy. One of the big ones is social connections. So just to say a little bit more about that. People who have opportunities to make friends are happier at work. And those people who have good friends at work feel connected to their company. And conversely, employees with no friends, most of them say, I don't feel connected to my company at all. If you have 3 or more good friends at work, you're 96% more likely to be satisfied with your life, not just with your job. So, I often say that I could do pretty much any job as long as I can work with people that I enjoy and that respect me. And I think that goes a long way. It's awesome to have the perfect job title and perfect job description and be perfectly matched with whatever your skill set is. But if you're completely lonely or don't feel appreciated, or it isn't fun to be with your coworkers, it's pretty hard to enjoy your job. One of the things that you might do to increase your social connections is practicing those acts of random kindness, really trying to see other people at work, not just with your eyes, but with your appreciation and with your compliments, and going out of your way to say hello to someone that maybe seems like they're on the periphery at the workplace, or that isn't as connected as maybe we might hope. Here's a sobering fact. You're going to spend about 90,000 hours in an average lifetime at work. Holy smokes. I know, I see some of your reactions like, oh man. And I don't say that to depress you as much as I hope to motivate you. Life is too short, and obviously we work too dang much to have a job that we hate. So I challenge you to really think about, is this the right job for me? And if it isn't, do I need to get my butt in gear and go find something else? Or if it is the right job for me, how do I make this a great place to work? How do I connect? How do I contribute? How do I feel part of this community? And obviously to make sure that we also have some life outside of work, because it is precious and few. I love this little picture of the third place person actually being way more excited than the first place one. And I think this speaks miles to our state of mind, that, some people are just happy to show up and place, right? We don't always have to be the winner, but you are a winner if you can choose to be happy in whatever situation you're in, and also that you would pick, that each day at whatever job you're doing. I often challenge my clients to pick their hard. So finding a job can be hard. Getting a job is hard. Having a job is hard. Working for your boss is hard. Working for yourself is hard. Being self-employed is hard. Being unemployed is really hard. So pick which one. They're all challenging, of course. But there is always someone who would trade places with you. So if you think, oh, this is awful today, I have to deal with my boss, blah, blah. Well, there's somebody who doesn't have a job who would like to deal with your pesky boss today, or would like to have the challenge of your job to get your paycheck. Your attitude is everything. It's very important too to find something where you feel that there is a purpose. So if you are going to work every day and you feel like you're just making widgets that nobody cares about, that doesn't have any impact on the world, you're going to have a hard time feeling satisfied. You have to find a way that you can feel like you're making a contribution. And even if the substance of your work doesn't feel that meaningful to you, then what are those other ways that you can make it meaningful? So for example, building that community at work, or connecting with other people, being able to really make a difference. So the whole thing is trying to find something that is consistent with your own values, things that you think are important in life, and that you can be doing that at work and in your personal life, more likely that you're going to feel satisfied. I like this perspective too, is that when we work really hard with something that we love, we call it passion. And nobody questions that. Sometimes we make huge sacrifices for it, our whole heart and soul into it. But if it's something that we really don't care about it, then we call it stress. Then it's a burden. Then it's eating at our mental and physical health, right? So I encourage you, and I hope that life can bless you with the opportunity to actually do a job that you feel really passionate about. It will make your life better all the way around. And if you haven't found that, I would continue to encourage you to look for that. But having a high stress job doesn't necessarily mean it's bad if you love what you're doing. And on the other end, having a low stress job isn't necessarily good if it's something that you really don't care about. And Brian's going to tell you a little bit about dealing with work stress.
All right. Thank you, Jen. All right. So we are going to get into talking about stress and some other aspects of our life, getting a little bit into the work-life balance. I just accidentally touched my screen so that I only see you now, Jen. Let me get back to this. Okay. All right. So these next couple slides, we're just going to go through some pretty simple, basic stress management techniques that we can use anytime throughout the day where we're noticing that our nervous system has been activated. And every one of us throughout each day, even if we really enjoy our jobs, we're satisfied with where we are in our lives, we're going to run into stressors. They can be small, they can be bigger. Some of the bigger ones we might tend to focus on a little bit more throughout our day. And these strategies can be used for that, but also when we just get like the quick bursts of stress that we might face. Could be an email, could be a comment somebody made, could be something that didn't go right and we're being told that we need to fix it. So grounding, well, let me just go back. If people want to share a comment or things that they do that they find helpful throughout the day, just type it in there so that other people can see it. I think that's helpful. So grounding is pretty simple. It sounds like a little bit more of a complicated term, but really what it is kind of just bringing yourself into the moment. So if you notice that your nervous system is activated, grounding is really just kind of bringing yourself back to the present, focusing on your breathing, and then just reminding yourself of what's happening around you. So one strategy for grounding yourself could be just paying attention to your senses. you could just take a moment to say, well, what do I see right now? And you look out your window and you say, oh, I see that tree blowing in the wind, and I see the buds like starting to bloom on the tree. And then you can engage other senses such as smell. What do I smell right now? Or even if you're looking outside, what do I think it might smell like? Or what might it feel like to be out there? So by activating those senses, you're essentially bringing your attention back to that. And that's the focal point. And you'll find that after just a couple minutes of doing that, the stress response that maybe you experienced earlier is lesser. Now, that's not to say that that stress response will not come back a little bit later, but the point is to deactivate the sympathetic nervous system.
So we had a couple of people in the chat that said one thing for them is to have a positive attitude, like we were talking about. And then someone else said box breathing, which is a great one. And this one is an alternate to that box breathing, but very similar kind of effect.
Yeah, so there's different breathing strategies that you can try throughout the day. The box breathing works real well. This one talks about inhaling through your nose up to 4, counting up to 4, holding it for 7, and then exhaling for 8. And you can do different times, but that can be a very good strategy anytime, anywhere when you're noticing that you're feeling stressed. And some people, if you want to comment too, people recognize stress differently. Some people, like when they initially notice it, some people might notice that the first thing they notice is their heart rate. They might notice that their breathing is shallower. Others might notice that their thoughts start getting a little racy, or they want to be reactionary to something that maybe they heard. And so this can be a technique that you can use if once you notice the initial stress response, say, wait, I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to do some of this breathing before I react. Another strategy is putting it in the safe container. So oftentimes our stress is triggered by what we're thinking about, what we're dwelling about. A lot of people at work, we can be distracted if we have issues going on in our personal life, or if work is really challenging, and we can become preoccupied with that. And a lot of times those thoughts tend to be pretty repetitive. We don't tend to come up with new things when we're thinking about something that's stressful. And so if you find that you're dwelling and ruminating on certain thoughts that seem to just be returning and causing you stress, a good question to ask yourself is this something that I need to think about right now? Is this something that I have control over? If the answer is no, and this is more of like kind of an imagery type thing, I'm going to imagine myself putting those thoughts or those concerns in this safe container, and I can return to them when I need to. Or if it's something that's completely out of my control, maybe it's something that I just need to leave in that safe container. Is that the next one? Backpack? I think there should be one on that wellness wheel. Okay. All right. So this gets a little bit more into work-life balance, which we commonly see through the EAP. People do come in for workplace issues. I'd say it's probably more common, though, that they come in for issues outside of work that carry over into work. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jen. I'd say that it's probably more so personal issues outside of
definitely agree
that we see people for. So it's very important that we're trying to find balance in our lives. And so this here is the wellness wheel, and pretty much categorizes different aspects of everyone's life. So when you look at intellectual, it's how am I challenging myself intellectually and cognitively? And that doesn't mean just like, am I learning new things? Am I being challenged intellectually at work? If I'm not, am I being challenged intellectually outside of work? Am I reading? Am I learning how to do new tasks, develop new skills? But then cognitively, from that standpoint, it is like, what is the quality of my thoughts on a day-to-day basis? Are those thoughts helpful to me, or are they harmful? How are they helping me in my day-to-day life? That's going to impact you emotionally, depending on what you're thinking about. So emotionally, am I able to recognize the different emotions I experience on a day-to-day basis? Do I have control over those emotions, or do they control me? And that also goes back to the thoughts that we tend to pay attention to on a day-to-day basis. Some thoughts are just automatic, they're habitual, and we don't have much control on the automatic nature of those. But once they come to my awareness, what do I do with those thoughts? So those two are very correlated. So your thoughts can control you, which will dictate your emotions, and that can control you as well. Physically, how am I taking care of myself physically? Am I eating appropriately? Am I getting exercise? How's my sleep? Am I checking in with my doctor on an annual basis? Am I going to routine screenings, dental appointments, etc.? Or am I not doing very well in that aspect of my life? Socially, looking at the people that you spend time with, who you're choosing to spend time with, and are those positive relationships? Are they reciprocal? Or do they tend to be more one-sided or dramatic? And then spiritually, really what this comes down to is, what is the purpose of my life? Am I connected to something bigger than myself? I think a lot of us would, well, for anybody, I would say that what gives us meaning is something bigger than ourselves. It's not just our individual accomplishments. And this goes back to what Jen talked about with a job that maybe seems a little bit mundane and we're not getting a lot of satisfaction out. What is the bigger picture of this? You know, what are we accomplishing in the big picture that might give this more meaning? So spirituality can, a lot of people resort to their faith or their religion, but it can mean a lot more than that. It can mean something that you're connected to, something that's higher than you. So it could be volunteering, could be advocacy, it could be something environmental, something that you're passionate about that is a bigger picture item. Occupationally, looking at, am I satisfied with my job? Do I find meaning in it? Again, as Jen mentioned before, every job is going to have some level of stress, even if we don't have, I mean, she even said, like, some people, maybe they're not busy during a period of time, or they don't have much to do. And that can be stressful in itself, because we tend to become complacent and may not seek out additional things that can challenge us. So looking at, do I feel like I'm a contributor, that I'm appreciated, and that are there people at my work that I feel connected to? And then lastly, financially. So there's basically 3 keys to financial wellness. So that's going to be paying off debt, increasing savings, and then investing in the future. So I think if one is dissatisfied with the path that they are on in their life currently, looking at each of those areas, and people are going to be naturally gifted in certain areas, and then other areas where we're not as naturally gifted in, and we got to pay more attention to and be more intentional in addressing. So I think it's good to kind of look at those and figure out where we're at in those different areas of our life. The backpack, what this is that every day we go to work or we interact with people, even outside of work. And a lot of times, let's say you go in and you say good morning to somebody and they just walk right by you. They don't notice you, or somebody has a little bit of a tone or an attitude in something they say to you. And we tend to take those things personally. And I think most of the time they're not intended, or they're not, the negative interaction may not be necessarily pertaining to you. So what this backpack represents is that everybody's carrying around something that is uncomfortable for them. It could be, maybe they had a fight with their spouse before they came into work, or they get a call from the school saying their kid needs to be taken home because they flipped a desk over, or something like that. Or maybe they got some bad news from a doctor, or they have a family member who's ill and they're just overwhelmed with too many responsibilities. So it's important that we recognize, I think most of us probably will naturally jump to the conclusion that maybe the uncomfortable interaction had to do with us. And a lot of times it may not have to do with that. Everybody has kind of a default mechanism that they go to when they're under stress in their behavior. Let's take the high road. Okay. So one of the things to think about too, and I mentioned before, depending on personality type, we're going to have a default mode that we go into when we're under stress. And a lot of times the way we interact and behave under stress is probably not the most productive, and people can misinterpret it. So it's important to think about, just even on a day-to-day basis, how do I want others to perceive me? Part of being emotionally intelligent is understanding how you're perceived by other people. And then also identifying how you want to be perceived, and then starting to implement those behaviors. So obviously people feel more comfortable when others are kind or generous, friendly, humble, respectful, loyal, considerate. Now we understand that people have flaws, and so when we are under stress, we may resort to some more unhealthy traits or negative traits. So we might become meaner, we might become more autocratic, we might become more judgmental, we might hold grudges, more prideful, stubborn, rebellious, inconsiderate, or dishonest. And a lot of times, I mean, there are some people that that's just kind of their natural personality. Now, it's important to know that those individuals may not be very content with their lives. But it's also important to note that when we are presenting with those traits and kind of figuring out, okay, what's happening here? What's happening in my environment that is causing me to act in some of these more unhelpful type ways? Is this I'm looking at a different one here, Jen. Oh, how to feel better on the job. Okay, we must have gotten rid of that one. All right, so next we're going to get into some strategies to feel better on the job. Now, this would be, I mean, obviously we can have bad days even in jobs that we really enjoy. If we have a job that maybe doesn't bring us much satisfaction, it's important to kind of look at what we have control over. So here is a control wheel. Most people's worry and stress is related to dwelling on things they don't have control over. And I think one of the best questions to ask yourself when you have a stress response to a situation, whether it be one that's happening in the present or one that we're worried about in the future, is saying, do I have control over this? And if it's something that's outside of our control, then it may be something that we don't need to pay attention to or dwell on. And so on the outside or the perimeter of this wheel, you see that what are some things that we're not in charge of? We're not in charge of what others think. Now, we can act in certain ways that will draw people closer to us. However, everybody has their own issues and they may judge. So we can't control what other people think about us. Can't control what other people feel about us. We can't control other people's actions. We can't control how others talk to us or others' judgments and feedbacks, and then the consequences of others' actions. So what are we in charge of? We're in charge of our own actions, how we respond to adverse situations, how we respond to positive situations, how we behave, the effort that we put in to different activities or work, our ideas and beliefs, motivation and team spirit. So that's, say, our attitude, related to our attitude, and then consequences of our actions. We have control over those things. And I think by paying attention to the things that we do have control over and paying less attention to the things that we don't, you'll find that it's empowering to do that. So when it comes to happiness, a lot of people, I mean, everybody says they want to be happy. I think everybody, if we could feel happy, we would be better. We'd be better at other people. We'd be better to ourselves. Now, this is not something that's just going to come to us when something happens. It's something that requires intentionality. And what that means is redirecting the way we think about things to being intentional rather than just letting our mind wander. If we let our mind do its own thing, we kind of think of it being on autopilot, we're going to be more drawn to threat, because that's how our brains are wired. So we have to be intentional in what we focus our attention on. So when you can't control what's happening, challenge yourself to control the way you respond to what's happening. That's part that we have control over. you choose your response in certain situations. And this is a good one just for getting ideas from everybody about how they take breaks, big and small, at work. I think this is important if you work in a sedentary type job and you have even just a couple minutes to take a break from work, finding things to do to recharge and de-stress for a moment can be very helpful. Even doing a little bit of exercise at work could be getting up and walking around, could be walking up on the stairs for 5 minutes, could be doing 10, 15, 20 push-ups by your desk. Here's a little plug for our YouTube page as well. We have some different exercises in there on grounding and deep breathing, chair yoga. Those things can be very positive in de-stressing for a few moments, kind of recharging our body and mind so that we can be more energized as we move forward throughout the day. Okay. Jen talked a little bit about this earlier. We saw the different reasons why people leave their jobs. Most people think it has to do with money. And most of the time, I think it has to do with the environment. So meaning their peers, the individuals that you work with, but also the leaders or who is managing your department. So the culture of the team you work on, a lot of times can be highly influenced by the leadership. So that is something to be aware of. So people tend to stay in their jobs if they feel respected and valued by their boss and the organization. When they tend to leave is when they lose respect for both of those. Now, I'm sure every team, every organization is different as far as how often you meet with your leader. I think it's important to, even if the leader isn't actively seeking you out, it's important for us to check in with our leader from time to time. And so if you get the inkling that there's something wrong, you're not getting any feedback anymore, maybe you're not getting more responsibilities, and that's something that you seek, and you have just kind of a gut instinct that maybe you need to check in with the boss, then take the initiative to do that. And hopefully they will take you up on that opportunity. A lot of times people feel a little bit more positively reinforced, and maybe the boss didn't have an idea about some things that maybe you're interested in or concerned about. This here is just a podcast that is hosted by Dr. Lori Santos, and she is a professor at Yale. There's been a lot of research done over the years on what contributes to happiness. And she hosts this podcast and also teaches a course on happiness at Yale, which became one of the most popular courses, I believe, over the last couple hundred years. So 1 in 4 students at the university are taking her class. And that is something that you can tune into. Obviously, there's a lot of content out there these days, really good content as it pertains to good mental health practices, and also just learning more about how our brains and bodies function. I mentioned earlier that happiness and feeling content require effort and being intentional. And again, a lot of people, I think, just expect that happiness will come to them, and that it's not very true. So it does require effort and intention. And now I think that's where sometimes people get stuck. Let's say they don't know. I don't know what really could make me happy or make me feel fulfilled. And that can certainly be a challenge as far as motivating oneself to seek things that will make them happy. And again, that's where the employee assistance program can be helpful. That's something that someone struggles to kind of figure out. All right, so this goes into our home life. So happy wife, happy life, happy spouse, happy house. outside of work is our real job, as far as how we manage our relationships and how we manage our home. So most people, if they're fulfilled at home and they're fulfilled outside of work socially, they tend to be better at work. They tend to be more content. They tend to interact with people in a more positive type way. Individuals that, and this is a lot of what we might see with people that are coming in for personal issues, is that does spill over into work. If you're distracted with conflict at home, conflict with family members, a lot of times that, I would say actually almost all the time, it will spill over into work, because it's going to impact your attitude. It's going to impact your mood. It's going to impact your ability to focus. So sometimes that requires making hard choices in our personal lives, thinking of, okay, well, what are my relationships like outside of work? What are my relationships like at home? And are these maybe not so helpful? Are they toxic? And if that's the case, then sometimes we have to make a hard choice to eliminate some of those negative aspects or people in our lives. So one of a practice that's been very researched over the last, I don't know, 20 years or so, that leads to people feeling more content and happy is being grateful. And this goes a little bit beyond. I think when you ask someone what they're grateful for, like at Thanksgiving, or a lot of times people just naturally and automatically will say, oh, I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my house, or I'm grateful that I have a job. And those are all great things. And that's something that, yeah, we acknowledge when we have an event like Thanksgiving or another event where we are recognizing things to be grateful for. But what this is really much more of a incorporating gratitude into your daily life, where it truly becomes a practice and a principle that you live by. And that's looking for small things, intentionally looking for small things. Maybe somebody gave you a compliment, or your boss said, hey, you did a really good job on that project, or you give somebody a compliment, or you tell somebody how they did a good job. So different ways to practice this. A lot of people have gratitude journals. Some people might write out a daily list of priorities. They might end their day with just reflecting on what went well, what can I be proud of, things that they can do tomorrow. So incorporating gratitude into your daily life will very much benefit your mood, your overall outlook on life, and how you interact with people. The alphabet soup, I saw you were on that one, right? Or the gratitude soup, or gratitude alphabet soup. That's another one. If you don't do a journal, you can go through the letters of the alphabet and write down, or just even mindfully acknowledge what you can be grateful for through the letters of the alphabet. So it's not happy people who are grateful, it's the grateful people who are happy. So by incorporating that mindset into your day and actually seeking out, paying attention to things to be grateful for, you will gradually become more content and positive and happy in your life. Also, this is just a little side note. Grateful people aren't always rich or have a lot of money. Okay. 5 reasons why money can't buy happiness. You'll never be satisfied. So it's kind of the gratification. Our minds are wired to always seek gratification. That can be short-term. It's short-term and long-term. So if you find yourself, think about, like, if you go on a trip and the trip's coming to the end of the week, you're like, oh man, this is going to suck. We got to go home. And then you're already thinking about what your next trip is going to be. So getting caught in that is not so helpful, because then we're always seeking out the next reward. And this here is kind of a good transition into that mindset. Remember, our brains are wired to seek out, they're going to pay attention to pleasure, threat, and novelties. So anything that's new, threats, the primary category that we're going to pay attention to. And then also pleasure. And a lot of times when I say pleasure, it means like expecting there to be some sort of gratification in the future. So if I do this, then I should get this in return. If I get that in return, then I get that release of feel-good chemical. If I don't get that, then I get a stress response. And a lot of people, their mindset, if they get caught on that trap, maybe, well, when I have this, I'll be better. Or when I get this different job, I'll be better. Or when I get, an increase to pay to this amount, I'll be better. And the problem with that is that we're not acknowledging what we have in the moment. We're not acknowledging what we're doing in the moment, and we're just anticipating some future reward. So you're not really living in the present. So it's important to catch ourselves when we do that. Which one are we on now?
What you can do today to love your job more. So it's a challenge for you individually to
Yes.
think of some ways that if you can pick even one of these things that we talked about today, it will spill over into other areas of your life. You don't have to change everything in one day, but if you pick one that you can work on, you will start to see improvement. So we challenge you, if you'd like to include it in the chat and encourage each other, that would be great. Or if you just want to kind of pause for a minute and think about something that you would like to do starting today to help you to love your job more.
And I think starting small is good.
Thank you again for joining us. Just a reminder again that the Employee Assistance Program is available to you. We would love to answer your questions or help you in any way that we can. If you have something that you would have a specific question to this topic you want to put in the chat, that would be great. Otherwise, we really appreciate you sharing your lunchtime with us. And please be watching for the emails that we will be having another Lunch and Learn event coming up in April. So thank you and have a good day. And we hope that you can learn to love your job. Oh, and happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
That's nice. Thank you.